My name is Sierra, and I'm 36 years old. I've learned that silence has its own kind of power, a slow-burning fuse that waits patiently until it explodes. Growing up, my family made sure I knew my place. Not the bright one, not the favorite, just the quiet daughter who was not quite ready to sit at the grown-up table, figuratively and literally. If you're new here, welcome. You might want to subscribe because what you're about to hear isn't just another story. It's what happens when the black sheep of a family finally stops apologizing for being underestimated. It started 2 weeks ago on a Wednesday night. The kind of night when the city hums softly outside your window, traffic lights flickering like lazy fireflies, and success feels so close you can taste it. I had just signed a deal that shattered industry records. My tech startup had been acquired for $180 million. The press was already calling me the new face of female innovation. I should have been celebrating. Champagne, cameras, calls from investors. But instead, I was home, sitting alone in the dim light of my apartment, watching the news. That's when the anchor's voice cut through the static. Sierra Hale's AI analytics company, Prism Core, just broke through market ceilings, establishing her as one of the youngest female founders to ever reach this valuation. I smiled, not because of the number but because of what it meant. Every snide comment, every condescending smirk from my parents and my brother, every "you're too emotional for business," all of it led here. They hadn't called. Not even a "congratulations." By the next morning, my assistant, Layla, called me in a panic. Sierra, your parents are in the lobby." I almost laughed. My parents? Yeah, and your brother too. They said they're here to talk business. Should I send them up? Business. The irony wasn't lost on me. The same people who once told me to focus on more practical dreams had suddenly remembered my name. I told Layla to let them wait. For 40 minutes. When I finally came down, they were sitting in the glass-walled lobby of my building. My father straight-backed in his tailored suit, my mother clutching her designer bag like it held her dignity, and my brother Mason scrolling through his phone with that same smug detachment he wore since we were kids. My father stood when he saw me. "Sierra." I smiled thinly. "You look surprised. What, you thought the receptionist was lying?" My mother forced a brittle laugh. "Sweetheart, we just wanted to see you. It's been months. Years," I corrected softly. "It's been years." They followed me into the cafe across the street. For a moment, the air between us felt heavy, thick with things none of us wanted to say out loud. My father broke first. "We heard about the acquisition. Congratulations. You've done well for yourself." He said it like he was reading it off a report. No warmth, no pride. My mother tried to fill the silence. "We're all so proud of you. Mason was just telling us how he always knew you'd make it." Mason didn't even look up from his phone. "Yeah, sure." I let out a slow breath. "You always knew, huh? That's funny, Mason. Because I remember you saying I'd burn through my savings in 6 months. He finally looked up, smirking. "And yet here we are. You proved me wrong." Happy ending. But it wasn't happiness that I felt. It was something colder, like the quiet edge of a storm. They hadn't come to congratulate me. They'd come because I had something they wanted. And I was going to make them admit it. I leaned back. "Oh, why are you really here?" My father sighed, adjusting his cufflinks. "Your mother and I. We've had some setbacks. The property in Aspen, the vineyard project, they didn't pan out. The banks have been difficult." There it was. The real reason. Mason chimed in. "You could help out, you know. You've got the resources now." Smiled small, sharp. "You mean I've got the money?" My mother's face tightened. "Sierra, don't be unkind. Family helps family." I let that sit in the air for a long second before saying quietly, "Funny. I don't remember anyone helping me when I was living out of my car 3 years ago, pitching Prism Core to investors who didn't even remember my name." Her eyes darted away. Silence stretched. Finally, my father said, "You were finding yourself. We didn't want to interfere." "Finding myself," I repeated softly, almost to myself. "You mean struggling?" Loan. Because you said I wasn't ready to sit with the family. He stiffened. He knew exactly what I was referring to. The Thanksgiving when I was 26, when they'd made me eat at the kids' table because my business wasn't real work. I leaned forward, voice steady now. Well, Dad, I'm ready now. They exchanged looks, the kind that communicate more in silence than words ever could. My father cleared his throat. We were thinking perhaps an investment partnership. Something small. You help us rebuild the vineyard, and in return. Cut him off. No. He blinked. Excuse me. I sipped my coffee slowly. No. I'm not giving you a cent. Mason scoffed. Wow. So success made you selfish after all. I met his gaze. No, Mason. Success made me remember. I could have ended it there. Walked away. Left them sitting in their polite discomfort. But revenge, real revenge, isn't loud. It's patient. It's precise. That day, I invited them to dinner at my new penthouse. They accepted, of course they did. People always show up when they think they're about to get something. What they didn't know was that I had already set the stage. The dinner wasn't about reconciliation. It was about revelation. They accepted the dinner invitation with the casual entitlement of people who assume favors will always be there to call in. I picked the menu to be simple and deliberate. Dishes my mother used to make when she wanted to impress her friends. Seared scallops, a bitter salad, and chocolate tart. I set the table with the china that used to be locked in the dining room. The one they refused to let me touch when I was a kid. Felt good to touch it now. They arrived wearing the armor of rehearsed civility. My mother smelled like the expensive lotion she used to pretend was thrift store humble. My father wore the same neutral expression he used when he wanted to hide discomfort. Mason showed up late, of course, with an easy grin and a watch heavy enough to be its own apology. We sat. The city lights threw a glittering edge over everything, like an accomplice. Isn't it beautiful? My mother said, smiling into the room as if she'd painted it herself. It is, I said. I like that you kept the date free. We exchanged small talk for the first course. I listened to them practice normalcy, and I catalogued it all like someone taking mental photographs. When the scallops arrived, I made a light, neutral comment about how food brings people together. My mother nodded, pleased. Mission accomplished, she thought. Then I asked, do you remember the Thanksgiving I was made to sit at the kids' table? My father's hand paused over his wineglass. Mason's jaw tightened. My mother's smile faltered. You made a choice about who I was allowed to be part of, I said quietly. You chose that I was not ready. You thought that the world would swallow me whole if I got the seat at the table. My mother's defenses kicked in. Sierra, we never. You said it, I interrupted. You told me I wasn't ready. I reached under the table and tapped the remote. The TV on the far wall, strategically placed of course, came to life. The same news segment that had played in my apartment 2 weeks earlier blinked into the room, my name across the screen, my face in high resolution. Reporters ticker tape the number, the valuation looping like a metronome. Their faces changed the way the weather changes before a storm. My father's composure slipped just long enough for me to see the man underneath. Congratulations, Sierra, he said, though it sounded thin. I let the applause on the screen finish, then I stood. I invited you here because I wanted you to see something else. I walked to the shelf, pulled out a slim folder and opened it. Inside were deed copies, legal notices, lien statements. I could feel the weight of them like a pulse. You remember the vineyard project? Yes. The Aspen property. The loans you mentioned this morning. They nodded like fish caught on hooks. I bought them, I said. Silence so complete it felt like an audible thing. Mason laughed first, a sharp, incredulous sound. You bought what? The deed is in my name, I said. I closed the files last week. They were in default. I didn't advertise. There was no auction spotlight. I paid what it needed to keep the creditors from tearing the place apart. My father's face went pale. Sierra, he started, voice cracking between the protocol-bound man he wanted to be and the son he was. You want money, I said calmly now, every word measured. You want me to bail you out. You want me to put band-aids on mistakes you made while you told me I wasn't capable of taking care of myself. Mason's eyes narrowed. So what, you own it now? You'll sell it back? No, I put the folder down. I'll make a trade. I slid a pen across the table and a contract appeared on the tablet at each place. My lawyer had drafted it in gold-ink simplicity. An agreement for public restitution. They would appear on camera. Not some private apology, but a filmed, time-stamped public acknowledgement of the way they had treated me. The comments, the exclusion, the years of not ready. They would record a short interview about the value of supporting women-led businesses and post it under my channel's next episode. In exchange, I would consider transferring a percentage of the vineyard back to them under strict terms. Oversight from a trustee, quarterly reports, and one non-negotiable clause. You will sit at my table. My voice did not waver. At family dinners I host. No kids' table. No disclaimers. I want to see you treat me like an equal in front of my friends, my partners, and in front of a camera. My mother's hand flew to her mouth as if to catch the word equal, before it escaped into the room. Mason slammed the palm of his hand on the table. You can't be serious. Oh, I'm serious, I said. And there's one more thing. I stood, walked over to the bookshelf, and pulled down a muted old cassette tape. Something Mason would remember, something they thought lost. You called me a dreamer on this tape. You said I was wasting my time. You said I should take up something more practical. I'll play it. If you sign, we move forward. If you refuse, the vineyard goes to a developer I already have meetings with. The Aspen property goes on the market. I set the tape into the player and hit play. Their voices from a decade ago, clear, unguarded, cruel in ways that paper never could be, filled the room. My father's hand went to his face. My mother started to cry. Not just the performative kind, but the raw kind that comes when the scaffolding of your identity splinters. Mason stood red in the face. This is blackmail, he spat. This is accountability, I said. And it's your choice. They signed. Not because they suddenly believed in contrition, but because they were terrified of the alternative. Losing the things they'd built their dignity around. They signed with hands that trembled for reasons I did not entirely understand. Embarrassment, fear of public shame, maybe even a dawning regret. When the last signature slid across the screen, I felt a strange mixture of triumph and emptiness. The revenge was executed with the meticulous calm of an artist who had painted the final stroke and then stepped back. But as I watched my parents' faces, raw and small and exposed, the victory tasted, for a fragile second, like something I hadn't anticipated. You'll post it, my mother whispered. Yes, I said. Tomorrow. I gathered the documents and placed them in the folder, tucking away the tape like a relic. They left that night quieter than they'd come, the city's lights catching them as they walked into the lobby below, shadows draped over shoulders that once felt indispensable. I stood at the window long after the door closed, the papery contracts burning a phantom heat in my hands. Revenge had delivered its verdict. But in the quiet that followed, I realized that what I wanted, more than punishment or proof, was something they might not be capable of. Genuine recognition. I couldn't force a feeling. I could only force a moment. Tomorrow millions would see who I was. Tonight, the house was mine to walk through in the dark. The next morning arrived like a storm wrapped in sunlight. My phone was already buzzing before I even reached the kitchen. Layla had sent 3 texts, all caps, followed by a string of exclamation points. It's live. Views are blowing up. Over 700,000 already. I took a slow sip of coffee, letting the bitterness settle on my tongue. My parents' video had gone public. The apology, the confession of years of emotional sabotage disguised as family discipline. On screen, my mother's voice trembled as she said, "We failed to see Sierra's strength because we were too blinded by our own idea of what success should look like." My father's face was drawn tight, each word he spoke rehearsed yet breaking somewhere in the middle. Mason stood beside them, jaw clenched, eyes cold. It was surreal. watching the people who once dismissed me now publicly kneel to the truth I had built with my own 2 hands. The comments poured in. This is powerful. Sierra's parents really said she wasn't ready. Look at her now. Accountability at its finest. By afternoon, the clip had crossed 1 million views. Sponsors were calling. Podcasts wanted interviews. The word forgiveness began trending beside my name, though I wasn't sure I deserved that title yet. That evening, as the city faded into amber light, I went to the balcony. The skyline stretched out before me. Glittering, loud, indifferent. My phone rang again. It was my father. I let it ring twice before answering. "Sierra," he said quietly. His voice had changed, stripped of its usual command. "You've made your point." I said nothing. He sighed. "I know we hurt you. Maybe we thought we were protecting you. Maybe we were just proud in the wrong way." I leaned against the railing. "You never thought I'd become anything more than your mistake." He didn't deny it. Just breathed heavy and old. "Your mother hasn't stopped crying. Mason's furious. But I suppose this is what we deserve." Something in me softened. Not forgiveness, not yet, but a kind of release. "You always said the world doesn't owe anyone a seat at the table," I said. "I built mine from scratch. And now I get to choose who sits with me." He was silent for a long time. "Would you want us there?" The question hit harder than I expected. "I don't know yet," I said finally. "Maybe someday, when the seat doesn't feel like a reward." He exhaled shakily, and I could almost hear him nod. Fair enough. That night, I scrolled through the flood of messages. Some called me ruthless. Some called me brave. Few called me an inspiration. But the truth sat heavier than all of that. I hadn't done it for fame or even revenge, not entirely. I did it to show them that love without respect isn't love at all. When the video reached 2 million views, I shut my phone off and let silence have the room again. I walked through the penthouse. My space, my silence, my proof, and I stopped by the dinner table still set from the night before. 3 chairs empty. One still warm from where I had sat and waited for them to finally see me. I pulled one chair back, the one that used to belong to my father at our old house, and sat down. The city's light washed across the silverware, glinting like 1,000 tiny verdicts. For years, I'd wanted them to say they were proud. Now, the whole world had said it for them, and it still didn't fill the quiet. Maybe revenge doesn't end with triumph. Maybe it ends with truth. I closed my eyes and breathed. Tomorrow I'd move forward. Not as the girl they doubted, not as the woman they envied, but as the person who stopped waiting for a seat and built her own house around it. And maybe someday when I'm ready, I'll let them knock again. In our family house. My story wasn't about payback anymore. It was about taking back the right to exist loudly, confidently, and unapologetically. Even when the people who raised you once made you feel invisible. So if you've ever been told you're not ready, remember this. You don't need their table. Build your own. And if you've followed me this far, subscribe. There's more to come.